Hello and welcome. My name is Debbie Gilbert. I'm the founder of the Best Business Women Awards, and today I'm joined by our 2019 Community Champion winner, Sarah Ellis from TIC Box Productions, who has helped an enormous amount of people and is an absolutely outstanding businesswoman. So I'm going to ask Sarah to tell you a bit about what she does and a bit more about the impact that her company has had. So Sarah, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing, Debbie?
We're fine. So tell us about TIC Box Productions and all the little other bits and pieces that help that cog, that wheel. I would say all the cogs that help the wheels turn for TIC Box.
Absolutely. Well, TIC Box stands for Theatre Inspiring Change. So we're a theatre company, but we're theatre with a business, with a difference. So we do theatre in education and we also do theatre in business. So the idea of it is that we look at issues and we look at empowering people through a type of interactive theatre called forum theatre, actually. So the idea is that when we work, the audience gets to be put into the shoes of another person to enable understanding, really. We're all about empowering people to be able to consider their behavioural decisions, consider their situations, and all about combating prejudice and discrimination. That's what we're here for. So, for example, we have shows on the road like Boy. So Boy looks at homophobia, biphobia and transphobia. But rather than, the reason I'm so passionate about it is that I think that we can all listen to somebody lecturing, and we can look at PowerPoint presentations, and we can watch movies or theatre that really move us. All of these things are really important in our learning as individuals. However, I have believed from when I was luckily enough to go to Rose Bruford Drama School, they introduced me to this whole other way of thinking, which is that rather than just listening and being passive, if you are part of creating the answer, that's going to embed in you so much more. So the way that we work is that the audience steps into the shoes of the characters, and the actors come out to the audience and go, well, what are we going to do now? Like, it's up to you. What do we do? And it's so powerful because the audience get to kind of give a bit of advice, and then the actor goes in, and then they get called out again, then they try something else, and then they go back in. It's the most passionately noisy place I've ever worked, frankly. We have done more work with young people, and that's normally of audiences of about 80 at a time. And it's just hugely passionately noisy. There's people arguing, and they go, you can't say that. Yes, you can. Try this. But the secret is that when they see the decisions that they make being acted out, it's at that point that passion that they've put into it, it's at that point that they kind of go, oh no, maybe that wouldn't work. It's the difference for me between seeing a really sad story. So one of our stories is about domestic abuse. And I know that we can watch films and we can do all sorts of things which are really important, where we look at the character and we think, that's just so awful, or I'd hate to be in that position, or even I wouldn't put up with that kind of thing, which is a really big thing about domestic abuse. But actually, it doesn't necessarily enable somebody to not get into that situation. So what we do is we look at the early warning signs, and then we pick them up in the play, and then we go backwards in the play and we go, well, it wasn't at that point that he gave an early warning sign or she gave an early warning sign. What does that look like? Well, what can he say in response? What can she say? And rather than us thinking, I will not tolerate you being horrible to me, which is true, but actually what happens when your partner then says, oh, it's because my dad was like that and you're not understanding, and okay, don't worry about it, I'll just leave you. Then what do you do? Does that make sense?
So what you're doing really is helping young people see situations played out in front of them in different scenarios, and they're kind of directing it themselves, really. They're directing the story.
Totally, absolutely, totally. And then they can try things out. And, there is a reality to the fact that our first instinct as human beings may be to punch somebody, actually. If we're honest with ourselves, we might not have made that decision. But if we're honest with ourselves, most of us understand feeling like we want to punch somebody when we are that frustrated.
Mm.
So what's interesting about the work is that that quite often comes up.
Mm.
And our principle is really, really clear in that the actors will do what the audience say. There's no pre-planning, there's no manipulation. They will literally do what they say. So punch him, brilliant, fantastic, I'm going to punch him. Actor goes out, bang, punches him. Now, at this point, you know, you're thinking, well, we've just made it work that you can punch somebody, which actually is against the law. But the secret, again, another one of the secrets, is that the other character is going to react to that. Now, as human beings with fight and flight, you know, it is quite likely that the other person will react with another punch or more violence or accelerated violence, or they'll run away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at that point, nobody said no. We haven't lectured. We haven't said, oh, don't be stupid. We haven't said, no, it's illegal. We've said, yeah, brilliant, let's try it. They've tried it and it hasn't worked. Or it's accelerated. Or sometimes one of the other actors, I facilitate. So I'm there with my kind of eyes and my ears all over the space. I will then get one of the actors to come in as a police officer and we have that conversation.
So what made you sort of come up with this? What was your background before you started up TIC Box then?
I was that young person who went to theatre schools, who went to, was in all the amateur dramatics, etc., etc. I did loads of musical theatre. I very arrogantly told my teachers that I didn't need to listen in school. I didn't understand school. I didn't get it. You know, it was bypassed me completely. And I told my teachers, well, I'm going to drum school, and so I don't really need to do geography. You know, I was quite arrogant about it. It was boring, though, I have to say. So I did get into. I went for drama school. I had a really bad experience before I went to drama school. In that I was in an abusive relationship at the age of 19. And I think that from my reaction was, as many people's reactions are, was to shut it down, shut myself off, shut down, not tell anybody, and just look forward. And there were, I won't go into details, but you know, it was really nasty. So I got into drama school because that was where Sarah was going. Like I said, I was quite arrogant about that. But I arrived at Rose Bruford, which was, so back in the day, there used to be the Conference of Drama Schools, and they used to tell you who were the best drama schools. Mm. And so everybody's aim was to get into the top 6. At the time, it was top 6. So I'll be honest with you, I didn't really look at who was doing what. I just looked at the top 6 and went, right, I want to go to one of them. I actually only auditioned for one. For 4 of them. One of them they smoked and talked to each other throughout my whole audition. Proper old school theatre types. Another one, nobody looked at me. There was just one person and they were writing the whole time. But I auditioned for Rose Bruford and I got into Rose Bruford. I got into, and I think it's fate personally, it's a community theatre course. Mm-hmm. So Miss Musical Theatre, Step Will Change Sarah, suddenly discovered this whole amazing world where people were using theatre to change people's lives and to question and to debate and to be highly political, or, you know, and all of that stuff. And I was so excited by it. It was like the first memory of opening a Christmas present. It was extraordinary. And I kind of went, right, this is it. Interesting.
So your passion started then, really, for this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I then found my voice with regards to what I had been through in our 3rd year show that we did, which interestingly, we were told we weren't allowed to do because it was too controversial for even a community theatre arts course, which was really interesting. And I must admit, we dogged on and on and on and on and on and on, and eventually we did do it. But that again at risk of sounding like a big hippie, that resistance taught me another valuable lesson, in that if I am going to take this type of theatre seriously, there is the potential to upset people, because when you deal with issues of discrimination and prejudice, there are going to be sections of people who don't like what you're saying, who are comfortable with how things are, but are also scared of how things could become. So I kind of went down that journey. But one of the things that I felt really strongly about was, if I was going to go and take theatre to change the world, basically, I wanted to focus a little bit more on young people. And I felt that I needed to go and train to be a teacher, because it was all very well me coming. So theatre and education companies had a little bit of a dodgy reputation at one point, in that they all turned up in like bright yellow dungarees and, like, you know, kind of went, oh, how do we change this? And like, all teachers are rubbish, you know. And I thought, I don't want us to be that. I want us to be down to earth. I want people who see us to instantly recognise themselves. I don't want to be virtuous. I want it to be real. So I went into train to be a teacher, and I got into school and I worked with young people. So that enabled me to kind of look at what people really wanted to talk about. And that was really important as well, you know. So that, and so from that there was teaching. I went and worked with another theatre company, and then I started, I said, right, it's time. I think
What year did you start TIC Box then?
Well, interestingly, I started it as Hyperfusion. So Hyperfusion Theatre Company. And that actually started in 2001. And what happened was, I always had the theatre and education thing there, but I did not know what to do or how to do it. There were seasoned players who were theatre and education companies, and that was it. So I started it as a theatre school, working with young people, and we used to do rehearsals, and we used to teach to sing, dance, act, to be triple threats, etc. And I started to put out to people that we also did issue-based plays. And I had a phone call from an organisation called HeartsAid, and they were actually, they're not around anymore. They work with people who are HIV positive. They were called an AIDS charity at the time, and they said, oh, well, we've heard you're this amazing director who works with young people. If we get a group of young people together to look at the kind of work that we do, can we hire you? I said, yeah, absolutely. So we went for a coffee, had this conversation. And I said to them, there's something else I do, which you might be interested in. And it's where we have professional actors, but we work with young people as audience, and taught them through it. And I taught them through the fact it's based on forum theatre, which is a type of theatre developed by a Brazilian practitioner called Augustus Boal. And he used to go into communities and incite revolution, basically. He used to go in and say, right, here's my play, here's the play, this is what you're going through, right, what are you going to do about it? And the audience members took it in turns to go on the stage and to come up with ideas. So I talked to them about this, and I said, but I don't want the audience necessarily to come up on stage, because I had also been asked to do some corporate work, and I was really anti-role play. Because I felt that, no offence to anybody who uses role play, but I felt that when you have non-actors and you ask them to role play, you're asking them to come up and be an actor. And I think then potentially you're coming away from the dealing with the issue of one of your members of staff is being homophobically bullied. It becomes about, oh, what am I doing? Or they completely shut down because it's a nightmare, because they're not an actor, because that's why they're in a job. So I said to this organisation that I'd like to try this new way of working. And they said, oh, all right then. And they got a grant for us. So we literally wrote a play, and they got an audience of police officers, nurses, doctors, teachers, senior leadership teams, etc., etc. And we did this performance with the interactive bit, and then they said, if any of you want this, it's available. They took a massive leap of faith, because we weren't actually producing it at that time. And I'll never forget that.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah, from that we then became that theatre and education company. So that was in about, it's hard to say, it's a bit muddly, but about 2004 I think it was.
And then you set up this Shush experience, which is one of your ways of raising money for what you're doing.
Yeah, because we were really good at working with young people, and I love working with young people. It's just awesome. It's really, really good. I learn something new all the time. And there isn't a gig where I don't come out feeling challenged and all of this stuff, but actually going, yeah, we've really made a difference. But what I felt was that it was all very well, all these young people kind of being passionate and everything else, but they were kind of being run to a certain extent by a bunch of adults. And actually, couldn't we do what we do with adults? Yeah, maybe. Okay. So I thought, right, we're gonna try this. We're gonna try it. We're gonna do a play about grief, which is going to look at how people deal with grief, men in particular, and that how other people's contributions to that, like what that means for that person, etc., etc. But I don't have a budget. I haven't got what I refer to as a panto budget. So I don't know if you know, but pantos spend a lot of money on their marketing, yeah, which is why so many people go to panto every year. I thought, I haven't got panto budget. I've got next to nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to privately invite people and tell them not to tell anybody else about it. And that's where the name The Shush Experience came out of. It was actually before the time when people were doing secret escapes and all of that sort of stuff, I hasten to add. It was sort of way before then. And we invited people to come and see something, and we didn't tell them anything about it. And they arrived at a town hall, and as they climbed up the stairs, there was a table at the top with a picture of a woman whose name I've completely forgotten, an older woman, and a book of condolences and a bunch of flowers. And then they went into the space where there were seats for them. They were given a cup of tea and a biscuit. And there was a bar with something stronger if you want it. And there was a man sitting there, a more elderly gentleman, looking quite sad, really. And then we started the play, which was started at the end of the funeral. So the idea was that the audience came in and were at that wake, which was after a funeral. Again, even though it's different to what we do at TIC Box, the idea is still that idea that if you are in bed, if you're part of something and you feel it, it's going to be a much bigger experience for you. So from that, the Shush Experience was born, and we then experimented with other things. So the first play was quite serious, but we went from the first play to the second play, which was all about love. We built an underground club. We told people that they had to wear something red in order to get through the door. We coupled people off and took a photograph of them as they came into this pub space. There was no stage. They literally were just sitting around tables with a drink. And then it started. And we had somebody who was the guru of love, and her assistant talking about something which is true, actually. Do tell me if I'm talking too much, Debbie.
Interesting.
Did you know that there are 8 or 9 stages of a relationship? And this is a thing. So the first stage is where you're all in love and this, that and the other. And then it goes through various stages of when you... So do you remember that first time when your husband, you thought he was amazing, and then the first time he did something that really annoyed you?
Don't we all?
And you know that moment when you're attracted to someone because they're really big and loud, and then you get really irritated because they're being really big and loud. So then there's that stage of your relationship where you negotiate through whether you are going to change yourself or you don't. And it eventually leads up to the perfect zen, which sometimes we get to, sometimes we split up and go with somebody else. So we had this premise of the fact that this woman was going to give you a magic potion, that you didn't have to go through all the stages, that she was selling it to you. But we planted 11 actors in the audience. So the audience got very used to the fact that they were watching this saleswoman and they were watching her assistant, who was quite inept, and there were two singers to keep them amused. And then these actors got up as if they were kind of, you know, engaging with it, and suddenly it all got dramatic. So we had a flirting workshop where one of the audience members was pitched against one other audience member who was spotted. She was an actor, but she was spotted because her phone went off and she had a conversation with a guy she was having an affair with. Yeah, you know, he was married, whatever. Then there was a flirting workshop. Then his wife kicked off because he was then buying her a drink through the next bit. Nobody knew who these people were. And then, of course, it eventually became clear that they were actors. We then went on to do the office party that goes wrong. So the audience arrives at this conference where the salespeople are announcing that they're opening a new place in Greece, and they've got to vote for the sales staff. And there's a sleazy salesman, and the audience gets so involved. We had a group of women who were going up to it was a ping pong ball company, ridiculous. They all sang the song, and they were voting with these ping pong balls, and these women were going up while different things were going up and changing the ping pong balls because he was such a git. And then and we've also done the wedding that goes wrong, and so people come to a wedding, they see the ceremony, they do the toast, they hear the speeches, but of course everything goes wrong.
So when people book to come to the Shish experience, they don't know what to expect, or do they get an email beforehand to know what it is they're coming to?
We kind of came away from the not knowing what to expect thing from a theme point of view, because people were getting a bit, they needed to know. It worked the first couple of times. So this time, for example, our last wedding show, we said, you're coming to Debbie and Daz's wedding. Please feel free to wear what you want. You're going to get a meal. They'll be there. Come and meet the family. It's going to be a great night out.
Well, I can't wait for these to restart. They sound very exciting. So let's talk about the awards. So what made you enter the Best Business Women Awards?
Well, I felt that obviously we do other things, but my main passion and being the person that kind of runs the company, my main passion is what we do at TIC Box, because I believe very strongly that we can change things for the better. I have to say, just on that note, we did 5 years in Stevenage looking at sexual health and healthy relationships with 2 of our plays, and teenage pregnancy went down by 15% after the 5 years that we were working there, which is just another testament to the fact that, you know, this stuff works because so I was thinking, okay, how do we get our message out to more people? What can we do? And I don't know where I saw you, but I saw you somewhere, probably on Facebook.
Yeah, probably online.
And I went, oh, that's interesting. Now, we had already been nominated for a National Diversity Award. We'd also already been shortlisted for a National Diversity Award and nominated for a European Diversity Award over about 2 or 3 years before. So I had kind of, it was in my consciousness that, you know, going for an award does increase people's knowledge about you. So when I saw you, I thought, okay, well, let's, you know, this would be really good to go for. This looks like an awesome kind of organisation. And then I thought, oh, no, I can't do it because we're not a business. And, you know, what we do is very different to business. We don't go to an office. We don't wear a shirt, even though I've put one on for you today, Debbie. We don't have fax machines. We don't, you know, etc. And so I kind of went, oh. And then I thought, no, come on, don't be ridiculous. How are you not a business? You are. You have clients. People pay you. You have a bank account, you know, and you're running at not a huge profit. We're actually a not-for-profit organisation. So everything that we earn gets ploughed back into the organisation. So I read all of your stuff again, and I thought, this doesn't feel like other awards to me. I don't mean national diversity and European diversity because they're done in a specific way and people vote for you out of nowhere. So the European award, I've never known who's voted. I don't even know how they found us. They literally just say, you've been nominated, you've been shortlisted, oh, come along to the theatre. So it's different. But other awards that I'd looked at, I kind of didn't really understand. But when I looked at your awards, I felt like there was a real sense that it was about congratulating people for working hard and producing something that meant something.
Phew, our marketing message is good.
Well, not just your marketing messages, because since I won 2019, 2018 we were shortlisted. So from 2018, it's actually my experience as well as your marketing messages. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, it's always, we love it when people re-enter, because obviously community champion, it's not an easy category to win, as you know, and to be shortlisted is a major achievement. And you were shortlisted and you came back, you were a finalist, and you came back and you re-entered. And it was great to hear that you'd won last year, because, you know, I always love it when people who've entered before come back and they win, because I think fair play. And you know, it was a very close call the year that you were a finalist, because it's always about sometimes 1 or 2 points, and there's something might just edge, you know. And last year was great. And obviously the next awards that we run, whether it's this year or next year, we don't know yet, you will be our chosen charity. So it's great to be able to raise money, because you're a CIC, aren't you? A community interest company.
Yeah, actually we were formed before CICs came into vision. So we are a not-for-profit corporate organisation, which were then given the name CIC.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think what the judges loved about you was like you touched on the impact, and you were able to demonstrate the impact that the charity had had, well, the organisation had with changing the views and thoughts about all of these things that we come across every single day, but actually being able to work with young people, like grassroots, so that they don't grow up to be bigoted adults. You know, they've got this kind of like much broader views of the world, and it's people like you that help them get that, because not everyone gets that support at home or wants to listen, like you said, to teachers preaching at them at school.
And that's the wonderful thing, you know, is actually that the whole process is very playful. But I also feel really strongly that our young people are so smart. They are so much more emotionally intelligent than we were brought up to be. They're so much more aware of inequalities than we were brought up to be. Now, don't get me wrong, there's an awful lot of work to do. And I think if I could have kind of hidden you in my pocket through the journey that we've been on, you know, some of it's really shocking. I have heard some awful stuff, you know, and when you read about judges saying, well, she had a short skirt on, you know, what does she expect? I've heard that from young people. And I've heard, you know, well, if isn't it interesting, as I'm telling you, I can see exactly where it happened as well. That's how much it impacts me. I remember a young person sitting there saying, well, you know, if I found out that my best friend was gay, I wouldn't speak to her again, and I would probably move class, so that there was no danger whatsoever that I would have to sit next to her. And you hear this stuff and you kind of let it sink. And that, you know, when I hear, well, yeah, but girls are all like this, and then it's a gorgeous moment of horror when you go, oh. And in fact, let me just interject with one more before I go on. I remember a gig, and there were about 6 young women in the second row, and there have been lots of challenging comments like, well, women this, and girls like it when boys grab them, and this, that and the other. And we talked about upskirting, where somebody puts a phone by takes a photograph, which is now illegal. It's only just been made illegal, interestingly. And we were talking, and you know, inside you feel like you're dying a little bit, you know. So we were talking about it and trying to get people passionate, and it was this awful moment where these 6 girls looked at me very honestly, and they said, well, the thing is, Sarah, it's just the way it is. And I just remember, and we've had so many moments of just going, ugh. But the joy then becomes what is important to us, which is, if people aren't saying this stuff, we can't necessarily change it. So what we do is we bring this stuff out by the way that we work. We encourage, we draw these opinions out. We have a moment of, oh, and then we go, brilliant, right. Let's deal with this. And we don't shut it down. You know, we don't say, no, you're wrong, how dare you, or anything like that. We go, okay, that's really interesting. You know, and the guy who said she was wearing a short skirt, you know, when girls wear skirts like that, it's really obvious what they want. We then talked about, if men wear shorts, is that showing you what they want? If I go swimming in a swimming pool, you know, and it gets people to think about it. And at no point have you said, you're an idiot. You know, you've embraced them. So that's why I am so passionate. I've got my award here, actually, Debbie.
Oh, look, there you go. Look, very worthy winner, and I'm really chuffed. I love it, and we look forward to seeing you at the final, hopefully this year, fingers crossed. Any words for anyone watching this who's maybe runs a charity, a CIC, not-for-profit, social enterprise, who are thinking of entering community champion? What would you tell them to do?
I think what I would say is that when we are doing honest, authentic, worthy work, it can be very easy for us to think that things like this aren't who we are supposed to be. You know, standing here with this, you know, we're supposed to be out saving the world. Actually, number one, you deserve, if you're doing great work, you deserve to be recognised. Number two, actually, what it does is it helps to put you on the map to more people. So since this, I have met so many people, you know, yourself and myself, we've had long conversations, Debbie. It's helped us as an organisation to grow. You know, it's helped people to know what we're about. And for us, the objective is to work with everybody, absolutely everybody. So this has really helped. And the other thing I'd say is, you know what, it really helps you to focus on presenting yourself as a business, which sometimes I think organisations like us can fight with a little bit, because actually that's not why we started it, but it focuses you on what your business looks like. And lastly, it was a darn good night out. And you know what? We all need that, and I feel for you with this whole, you know, not knowing whether we can go ahead this year, but it'll happen next year, Debbie. And I think,
I mean, this is what we've said. We've said that if people enter, and we won't know at the moment. I mean, entries shut end of July, so just carry on entering, and then we will either, well, we've got one of three options. Either we can go ahead 9th of October, happy days, and Sarah will be there. If we can't, then we will either port the entries into 2021, so automatically we'll just cancel 2020, or if we've got enough entries and enough interest for this year, then we'll look at doing a final early 2021, which would be the 2020 final, just early 2021.
Fabulous.
So that's what we're looking at. That until the government give us some kind of guidance, you're in the same boat in the entertainment business, hospitality, entertainment and events. We're all very much sitting, waiting, because they've announced lots of different other industries that can go back, you know, shops and things, but nothing at all about our sectors. So we are waiting with bated breath, really, to find out what can be done. So, but I think at the moment, for people to sit and reflect about what they have achieved over the last few years, and particularly with the charity champion category, because you know, it's a great publicity for your charity, even if you don't win. And if you win, we fundraise for you at the final, so it's an extra bit of money going into the coffers, as it were, as a result. And you know, we're not charging now for entry for charity champion, and we're also now this as of this year, not because I'd kind of, it was always my aim that the charity category would actually get free tickets to the final, and that's happening this year. So
amazing.
Trying to make it very, something that's easy, because they don't have to pay to enter and they don't have to pay for the tickets. So therefore, there's no cost at all to the charity to enter this and to be part of the final. Because I want to be able to reach more charities, and I got a bit of additional sponsorship this year, and that's where I've diverted the money to that.
Which is amazing, yeah. And if you're raising money at the next event, or any money that you raise for us, we've got 2 projects that we're looking into. So we want to do our domestic abuse play. We want to do a new play for adults. So if, obviously, according to when we go back and everything else, that's one of the plans. We're also
good to know.
Work in prisons to take our domestic abuse show then into prisons. We want to do a show about being a trans gender teenager. So your money that you fundraise, we are going to put it straight into a project rather than the general, so you'll know where that's going by then. So thank you.
Oh, well, no, thank you. And thank you for joining me today and sharing all this interesting stuff that you're doing, which I think is really fascinating. And go off and enjoy the sunshine now. You can go and sit in the garden, hopefully.
Shut up now, can't I?
Oh, thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.